Hey guys, tonight we slip into the muddy, candlelit hush of a medieval village, one that doesn't exist on any map, but it might live somewhere in your bones. The roofs are thatch, the air is thick with peat smoke and wet wool, and you're standing in the center of it all, barefoot, at the edge of your childhood and the start of something far less dreamy. You're a young woman, barely 16, and tonight is your last as a daughter. Tomorrow, you'll be a wife. You don't feel ready, but that's not really the point, is it? The sky is slate gray and bruised, the light fading fast behind the village chapel's hunched roofline. Inside your family's cramped cottage, your mother is already muttering about linens and goats, and your father is off at the alehouse, negotiating over the last strip of land tied to your name. Your wedding is not a Pinterest board, it's a transaction. And you're the bridge between two families' survival plans. No pressure. You shift in your patched linen shift, scratchy and stiff from yesterday's wash. It's your best garment, but the elbows are thin, and it still smells faintly of last winter's smoke. Outside, the village hums with low voices and half-drunk laughter, the kind that's always louder when it's about you. And it is about you tonight. The whole village knows what tomorrow brings. Most of them have already had a bet on whether you'll cry or faint. You've heard them, near the well. She's marrying the miller's son? Poor thing. Or, lucky girl. At least he's not missing any fingers. You probably won't survive this without at least a few humiliations that'll keep you up for the next decade or two. That's just how it works here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'd love to know where you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing by the fire pit, which isn't much more than a pile of blackened stones in the center of the room. It's early evening, and the stew is barely warm. No one's eating. Your mother is pacing in tight circles, clucking about the missing dowry papers and muttering about how the stool your father promised, as part of the exchange, wobbles like a drunk man. In the corner, the family goat, who has claimed your bed for the past 2 weeks, is chewing something it probably shouldn't. You eye the mattress, a straw-stuffed sack shared by you, your sister, and the goat, and wonder how you're supposed to become a wife when you've never even had a pillow to call your own. Outside, someone lights a torch, and its glow flickers through the gaps in your cottage wall. The village is coming alive. Neighbors laugh too loudly. Somewhere, a fiddle scratches a wedding tune badly out of tune. You know that song. They played it at 3 other weddings this spring, and 2 of those brides were already back at their parents' cottages, one with a baby, one without. You glance out the door and catch sight of the chapel. Its crooked bell tower leans left like it's eavesdropping. The priest is probably already practicing his speech, full of warnings about chastity, obedience, and Eve's original sin. You're supposed to kneel before God and your neighbors and promise to love a man you've barely spoken to. Last time you saw him, he was hauling a sack of flour and didn't look up when you passed. Joke number 1. If romance is a flower, yours is a sack of wheat with legs. The wind picks up, carrying with it the smell of manure, roasted barley, and the faintest sweetness of blooming hawthorn. Spring in this village is a brief and muddy affair. The well path is rutted with wheel tracks and hoof prints, and you nearly twisted your ankle on it this morning. The villagers say a bride who trips on the way to the chapel will bring bad luck to her husband. You've been practicing, walking, flat-footed, ever since. Your little sister is spinning in circles by the fire, playing some game with a button and string, completely unaware that the next time she plays bride, it might be real. She's 8 now. You were promised when you were 10. There wasn't a feast or even a handshake. Just 2 fathers nodding across a bench at the alehouse. You grab a wooden bucket and step outside. The air bites. A dog barks somewhere near the pig pens. The well glints in the twilight, and as you lower the rope, your reflection stares back. Flushed cheeks, worry-lined brow, eyes too old for your face. You haul the bucket up. It sloshes, cold water dripping onto your feet. You don't feel like a girl anymore, but you don't feel like a wife either. Just something in between. Something being handed off like a parcel wrapped in coarse cloth. Inside, your mother snaps at you to mind the stew and reminds you, again, not to forget the chickens that are part of your dowry. He'll expect fresh eggs by next week, she mutters, and don't forget to smile when you see his mother. That woman could sour milk. Joke number 2. If your smile is the glue holding this marriage together, they'd better keep a cow on standby. You stir the pot. The goat sneezes. Somewhere in the distance, the millstone turns. Your groom's hands are probably chalked with flour and aching from lifting sacks all day. He's strong, they say. Sturdy, your mother says, which is medieval code for not dead yet. The sun dips lower, and you feel the village shift around you. You're no longer a girl in a family. You're a girl on the brink. Tomorrow, you'll stand in front of the chapel doors, trying not to trip. You'll vow yourself to a boy who didn't pick you. You'll be watched, measured, and whispered about. You ladle stew into a bowl and sit on the floor. Your sister offers you the string from her game. You smile and twirl it between your fingers, pretending it's jewelry. You've never owned any. Maybe you'll get a ribbon tomorrow, or maybe just a nod and a plate of meat. Joke number 3. If weddings are supposed to be magical, someone forgot the fairy godmother. You've got a goat. You lie back on the straw, the floor beneath you cool and uneven, and stare at the flickering ceiling. The rafters creak. The wind howls through the gaps. And somewhere beyond the door, your name is on the villager's lips. You close your eyes. Tomorrow, everything changes. The first light of dawn hasn't yet broken, but the village is already stirring, like a nest of mice before a storm. You can hear it, boots crunching gravel, crows arguing in the ash tree outside, and the low, rhythmic thud of someone chopping wood too early and too eagerly. Maybe it's your uncle? Maybe it's just someone using your wedding as an excuse to look busy. Either way, the noise means it's begun. You're not allowed to see the groom this morning. Not that you'd planned to. There's no note under the door, no love song outside your window. Just cold air, early sweat, and the sound of your mother rustling through a bundle of dried rosemary like it holds the key to your future. She's been muttering prayers since the fire was lit, a mixture of Latin and old wives' tongue, something between a blessing and a threat. By the time the sun lifts its reluctant head over the thatched roofs, you're halfway through being reassembled. First came the scrubbing, rough cloth, cold water, and the kind of soap that smells like ashes and goat tallow. Then the brushing of your hair, dry, cracking, unforgiving. And now your scalp tingles where she tugged too hard. Your shift is clean, but coarser than anything you've worn before. It was your grandmother's wedding linen, supposedly lucky. Lucky in the way that she had 7 children and only 2 of them died before adulthood. In this village, that counts as fortune. Your mother tries to smile as she pins a dried sprig of hawthorn into your hair. But it's a strained expression, like the smile of someone who's just sealed a barrel of salted fish too tightly. "You'll look fine," she says. Not beautiful, not radiant, just fine. Joke number 1. In a place where mirrors are a luxury, fine might be the highest compliment you'll ever get. She tells you not to blink too much when you walk through the square. "They'll be watching," she says. "And don't slouch." You nod. What you don't say is that the idea of them watching is the part that makes your stomach turn. You step outside the cottage, and everything is sharper than it was yesterday. The air feels brighter, colder. The earth has been trampled into a kind of sticky mud by the villagers gathering early. You walk carefully, lifting your hem just enough to keep it from dragging through the muck, but not so high you seem immodest. It's a delicate balance, one that no one has taught you, but everyone will judge you on. The baker's daughter, barely older than you and already wed twice thanks to fever and misfortune, waves from her door. Her smile is sympathetic, too sympathetic. You nod back, unsure if that makes you look gracious or desperate. At the chapel, the priest is already fussing with a bundle of scrolls and muttering about the order of vows. His breath smells like onions and wine. He barely acknowledges you, which is somehow worse than if he had barked instructions. You're not a person to him. You're a name in his ledger, a womb with a future obligation. Joke number 2. If fertility were a crime, this village would already have you sentenced. By now, the square is filling. People linger with the same expressions they wear at a pig slaughter. Curious, hungry for spectacle, and grateful. It's not them. The children chase each other with sticks, pretending they're swords. An old woman pokes a loaf of bread like it might turn to gold. Somewhere, someone is already slightly drunk. You hear your name called, followed by the grooms. His voice doesn't carry. He's standing near the well, looking freshly shaven and mildly terrified. You recognize the expression? It's the same one you wore all morning. The ceremony is about to start. You line up in front of the chapel doors as instructed. Your father places a dry, calloused hand on your back and gives you the gentlest shove forward. Not encouragement, more like delivery. You glance at the chapel's wooden archway, carved centuries ago with saints and angels, now worn faceless by wind and time. The door creaks open. Inside, the chapel smells of damp stone and stale incense. Light streams through the stained glass in fractured colors, falling on the dusty rushes scattered across the floor. The altar is draped in a cloth that's seen better decades. As you step forward, your footsteps echo far too loudly. You're hyper-aware of your body, your breathing, your hands, which you keep clenched tightly in front of you, like a prisoner awaiting trial. Historians still argue whether most peasant weddings were held inside churches or just blessed outside for convenience. What they agree on is this: the church made marriage binding, not romantic, not mutual, binding. The priest drones through the rites, and you try to listen, but the words wash over you like river water, cold, fast, and impersonal. Your groom mutters something that sounds like agreement, and then it's your turn. You repeat the lines, hoping you get the Latin mostly right. Your mouth is dry. Someone coughs. A baby starts crying and is swiftly shushed. You feel the iron ring slipped onto your finger. It's heavier than you expected. Not literally, it's just iron, but symbolically, it might as well be a shackle. Quirky fact: in some villages, people believed if a bride dropped her ring during the ceremony, the marriage would be cursed. You grip yours like it might try to escape. When the blessing is finally pronounced, there's a strange pause. Not joy, not relief. Just a moment where everyone adjusts to this new fact. You are now wife to a man you've never touched, bonded by a vow that cannot be undone unless death intervenes, or the Pope does. Outside, the village erupts into a rickety version of celebration. Someone throws petals, dandelion heads and clover mostly, because roses are for nobles. The music strikes up, and it's as out of tune as expected. There's bread, broth, a slab of meat you hope is from the butcher's goat, and not the mystery one that vanished last week. You sit beside your new husband at a long bench. He nods politely, says your name once, then falls silent. You're not sure if that's a blessing or a warning. Joke number 3. Your first married conversation might be the only one without an audience. The feast stretches long, stuffed with laughter and chewing, and too many sideways glances at the two of you. This isn't just a wedding. It's a lead-up. Everyone knows what happens next. They pretend to forget, but their eyes never stray far from your hands, your blush, your posture. As the sun begins to dip again and the wine jug lightens, the crowd grows louder. You try to count how many people have already commented on your fertility. You lose count after 8. And then someone stands, slaps the table, and announces what you've been dreading since your 10th birthday. The bedding is about to begin. The words hang in the air like a bad smell. Time to bed the bride. The laughter that follows is rough, full of ale and anticipation. Not kind, not cruel, just unthinking. You grip the edge of the table as your heart slides down your ribs and lands somewhere in your stomach. 2 men stand, grinning too wide. You know them. Neighbors. Probably drunk. They start banging their mugs rhythmically, chanting something half-rhymed and completely inappropriate. It's not just for fun. It's tradition. The bedding ceremony isn't an awkward joke here. It's a duty. A public one. Joke number 1. If privacy is gold, then you're a pauper in a glass house with no curtains. Your mother-in-law pulls you to your feet before your knees can lock. Her grip is firm, but not unkind. More like someone carrying bread they don't want to drop. She adjusts your headpiece, then nods at your groom, who looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. You can't tell if that makes it better or worse. The procession begins. They don't just escort you, they parade you. Like you're a prized goat or the village's only candle on a dark night. Someone starts singing a crude version of a wedding hymn. Others join in. A few villagers carry torches. You catch the eyes of the miller's wife. She doesn't sing, just watches. Her expression unreadable. Your path winds through the square, past the chapel, past the well where you used to drop stones and wish for different futures. The group swells behind you, and every step feels like the last one you'll take as a person. From here on, you're property, official, legal, blessed. The bedding house is a smaller cottage just beyond the village edge, set aside for this exact purpose. It smells of herbs and smoke, and someone's lit extra candles. Fresh rushes have been laid on the floor, but they're already scuffed by boots. The bed is in the center, draped in linen, raised slightly off the ground, and surrounded by far too many people. Historians still argue whether all bedding ceremonies were this public. Some say the crowds left after escorting the couple. Others insist they stayed for the whole thing. Either way, the performance was real, even if the act wasn't. You step over the threshold, and someone throws a handful of oats. Fertility, they say. You try not to flinch. Your groom is behind you, silent, stooped slightly like a boy about to be scolded. The priest mumbles a final blessing outside the door, and someone slams it shut behind you. The lock clicks. But you're not alone. Not yet. 2 older women remain, midwives, or more accurately, witnesses. Their job isn't to guide you, it's to verify. Not that anything really needs verifying. They'll say it happened whether it did or not. That's how things work here. Truth is a matter of consensus, not evidence. They undress you first, not your husband. You. Slowly, methodically, like peeling the husk off a boiled egg. You try to stay still, to breathe normally, to pretend this is happening to someone else. Your arms tremble. One of the women hums. The other tuts at your goosebumps. Then your groom is standing awkwardly at the edge of the bed, shirt half off, looking not at you, but somewhere near your elbow. He's pale, more nervous than you expected. You don't know if that helps. Joke number 2. If romance novels were written by peasants, this would be page 1. He looked at her elbow and panicked. The witnesses finally withdraw, slipping through a side door like shadows, leaving the room colder than before. And then, it's just you. The mattress is straw-filled, the sheets coarse, the air heavy. You lie back, your heart thudding like it's trying to break a rib on its way out. You expect pain, you expect noise, you expect something, but nothing comes. He kneels by the bed, stays there for a moment too long, and then finally speaks. His voice is dry and low. "We don't have to," he says. You blink. Your mind, set to survival mode, stutters. This wasn't in the script. You stare at him, unsure if you heard right. He shrugs, looks away again. They'll assume it happened either way. This is your twist. Not a dramatic escape, not a scandal, but a moment of stillness, of maybe. He doesn't touch you, doesn't move, just waits. You whisper something, "Yes, thank you," or maybe just a sound. But the moment passes quietly. He curls up beside you, not touching, facing away. You lie stiffly, the linen's itching, the torches outside guttering in the wind. Somewhere out there, the village toasts to your union. Songs are sung, bread is broken, bets are settled. You don't sleep. Not for hours, but eventually, your breathing slows, your body unclenches, and the silence becomes something gentler than fear. Quirky fact, in one German village, they used to hang a symbolic sausage above the bed as part of the bedding ritual. No one's quite sure why. You're just grateful you didn't get the sausage treatment. Joke number 3. You survived your wedding night without being groped, prodded, or inspected. And in this village, that's practically a fairy tale. The rooster doesn't crow until your eyes finally close. a single bird, announcing morning with all the subtlety of a door being kicked in. You're still a wife, still watched, still expected to be fruitful and obedient. But something small and strange just happened. You weren't consumed. You weren't broken. You were given a choice. Not freedom, not power. Just one small no that was honored. In this world, that's not nothing. The morning air is thin and sharp, slipping through the cracks in the cottage like a judgmental aunt. You wake before the sun fully rises, blinking at the uneven wooden ceiling above you. Your husband is still asleep, curled on his side, a small puddle of drool on the edge of the pillow. You didn't share. His breathing is slow, even. Peaceful, almost. You slide out from the straw mattress quietly, not because you care if you wake him, but because you don't want to make a sound at all. You want to move like fog, present but unnoticed. The cold floor bites at your bare feet. The wedding linens sag around your frame, wrinkled and damp with night sweat. You peel them off and dress yourself in yesterday's shift with numb fingers. Outside, the village is yawning awake. You hear chickens clucking, a cartwheel creaking, the distant call of a baker shouting prices no one will pay. Life goes on, just not yours. Yours has shifted, twisted slightly into a shape that will take getting used to. You step outside. Morning mist clings low to the fields. A cow moos in protest as someone, probably your new brother-in-law, coaxes it toward a milking stool. You walk slowly, deliberately. You're not supposed to return home. Not your old home anyway. But you're still unsure where exactly you're meant to be. And then you see her, your new mother-in-law. She's standing like a landmark outside the house you're meant to live in, arms crossed over her chest, eyes narrowed against the morning light. She doesn't speak, just tilts her head and walks inside, leaving the door open behind her. You follow. Inside, the hearth is cold. The air smells like garlic and old stone. She doesn't tell you what to do, doesn't need to. You stoke the fire because it's obvious, because that's what you are now, the fire stoker, the bread kneader, the silent shadow who appears before dawn and disappears after supper. You kneel, poke the ashes, and realize something important. You've never made fire alone. Back home, your mother always did it. You fumble with the flint, scratch your knuckles, get soot on your cheek. Your mother-in-law says nothing, just watches. She folds her arms tighter. Joke number one: if silence were currency, she could buy the whole village twice over. Eventually, the fire catches, and she grunts softly. Approval, maybe, or indigestion. You sit back on your heels, soot-streaked and aching. She tosses a handful of herbs into the pot and gestures vaguely toward the larder. You take the hint. This is how you learn. Not through words, but through omission. You'll be corrected when wrong. That's the system. Historians still argue whether peasant women in medieval Europe were truly subservient or subtly powerful within their households. You're starting to think the answer is both. Your new husband stumbles in sometime after dawn, still half dreaming. His hair is stuck up on one side, and his tunic is backwards. Your mother-in-law glances at him, then at you, and you understand what that means. Whatever happened, or didn't, last night is between you and him. But she'll be watching. She'll count the months. You stir the pot, turn the bread, watch the fire. You learn fast. The house is larger than your old one, but not by much. It has 2 rooms and a loft where grain is stored, and occasionally rats throw parties. You and your husband share the back room now, a privilege apparently. Some couples sleep by the hearth until a child justifies better quarters. You get your own stool, not a new one, just one with slightly fewer cracks. Your name is used sparingly in the house. Mostly it's her or the girl. You don't mind. A name is a label. This is a role. You visit the well, fetch water, greet the neighbor women with cautious nods. Some smile, some don't. The midwife passes you on the road and raises an eyebrow, then drops it. She knows, or guesses, but says nothing. You're expected to be modest, industrious, obedient, but not dull. A dull woman is suspicious. Dullness means resentment. Resentment leads to witchcraft, apparently, and nobody wants a witch in the family. Joke number 2. In a village like this, all it takes to be accused of sorcery is working too late or looking too happy. At midday, you bring your husband lunch in the field. He says thank you. Doesn't look up. You sit beside him anyway, gnawing bread that tastes like duty. There's no romance in this. Not yet. Just proximity, shared tasks, mutual confusion. Still, he doesn't push, doesn't demand, just eats, wipes his mouth, and offers you the last fig in his pouch. You take it, not because you like figs, but because it feels like the first true sentence between you. Quirky fact: some medieval communities believed figs increased fertility. You wonder if he knows that, or if he just doesn't like figs either. That night, you lie in the same bed, but say nothing. Neither of you moves much. The straw crackles beneath you. The fire flickers in the next room, and you realize something strange. You're not scared, not exactly content either. But the sharp edge of fear has dulled. Now it's more like a stone in your shoe, irritating, constant, but survivable. Your body aches in new ways. From work, from pretending not to be afraid, from holding in every reaction just in case it's the wrong one. But you sleep, not deeply, not safely, but enough. Joke number 3. If you can fall asleep with one eye open and still dream, congratulations. You're officially a medieval wife. You wake once in the night, startled by a creak in the loft. You think of mice, rats, old spirits. You think of your mother. You touch the iron ring on your finger and feel its weight again. Not just metal, but everything that came with it. You don't cry. You just breathe, slow and steady, and try to remember that this, too, is a kind of beginning. The first full day of marriage dawns cloudy, and your place in the world has officially changed, even if no one sends a memo. You wake before the rooster this time, hair tangled, mouth dry, back stiff from the unforgiving straw mattress. Your husband is still asleep, snoring gently. You leave him there and step into your new life like stepping into a river, cautiously, because you don't yet know the depth. The hearth needs tending. The ashes have settled thick overnight, and the embers are cold. You kneel, stirring through the remains with a stick, as if searching for something lost. It takes 4 attempts and 3 curses whispered under your breath, but eventually the fire flickers back to life. You feel disproportionately proud. Small victories count more when you're starting from scratch. Your mother-in-law doesn't compliment you. Of course not. But she does grumble slightly less when you bring her the first mug of hot broth. Progress. In medieval terms, that's practically a parade in your honor. By mid-morning, you're hauling water from the well again. No one offers to help. A few people nod as you pass, but most look through you, because now you're part of the background, a wife, a servant of her household, a body assigned to duties, not dreams. Joke number 1. Yesterday, you were the bride. Today, you're the broom with legs. You scrub linens in the cold stream beside the road. Your fingers ache. The soap is lye-based and stings your knuckles. You watch the froth swirl downstream and wonder how many other women are doing the same thing right now. Hundreds? Thousands? All of them bent over cold water, scrubbing out dirt that always comes back. By noon, your arms are lead, but the house is cleaner. You've mended a tear in the old curtain, chopped a bundle of onions for the stew, and found a broom that doesn't snap when you lean into it. None of this is praised, but no one yells either. It's a sort of peace. You share lunch with your husband. It's bread, stew, and silence. He chews with focus. You eat slowly, trying not to make noise. Eventually, he glances up and says, "You did good with the fire. It's so casual, so quiet. You almost miss it?" You nod. That's it. That's the entire reward. But still, it warms more than the broth. You return to work. There's always more to do. The cow has kicked over its trough again. The chickens are squabbling. Your hands smell like turnips. This is your life now, repeated daily with variations depending on weather and livestock moods. Mainstream historical fact. In most medieval villages, a newlywed woman's worth was measured in how well she managed the household. Cleaning, feeding, bearing children. Not her personality, not her wishes, not even her prayers. But here's the thing. People are watching. Even if they don't say it aloud, they're judging how you knead the dough, whether your stews taste right, how quickly your face stops looking surprised by labor. You learn to smile at the right people, laugh at the safe jokes, and nod when older women say, "You'll get used to it." You spend time watching them too, especially the ones with lined faces and sharp eyes, the ones who survived husbands and births and bad winters, the ones who hold small, quiet authority without needing permission. Quirky tidbit. In some villages, older widows were considered lucky charms for new brides, unless their previous husbands had died too young. Then they were witches, so you never know which grandmother you're dealing with. In the late afternoon, your sister arrives with a basket of leftover bread from your family's hearth. She's wide-eyed, bouncing, talking too loud. She asks if being a wife is fun. You say nothing. She laughs like it's a game. Then, watching you stir the pot, she says, "You look tired." You want to say, "I'm not tired. I'm becoming." But instead, you offer her a spoonful of stew, and she slurps it, then makes a face. "It's okay." She shrugs. Joke number 2. 8-year-olds are the most brutal food critics in the known world. After she leaves, you take a few moments to yourself behind the house. It's not private, not really. But it's quieter. You sit on an overturned bucket and just exist. For 10 minutes. That's all. You hear birds' song. You smell the damp wood. You see ants marching over a stone, carrying crumbs with perfect teamwork. It's oddly reassuring. The world keeps turning, even when you don't quite know where to stand on it. Your husband finds you there later. He says nothing, just hands you an apple. It's small, tart, and mostly bruised, but you take it. That's the second fig-shaped offering in as many days. Maybe he's not romantic, but he's not cruel. That's more than some women get. He asks, "Did your mother ever teach you to thatch?" You blink. "No." He shrugs. "I'll show you tomorrow." That's it, the world's dullest date. But you nod. It feels civil, like you're learning the choreography of a dance no one taught you, one that isn't about passion or excitement, but compatibility of quiet. Joke number 3. If marriage were a play, you're currently in Act 1, the mutual shrug of shared turnips. The sun slips lower. You tend to the evening fire. You adjust the rushes. You scrape the bottom of the pot. And somewhere between the kneading and the sweeping, you begin to feel it. This life, as small as it is, fitting around you like a second skin. It's scratchy. It's tight. It smells like onion and ash. But it's yours now, for better or worse. The church bells ring too early, their hollow clang bouncing off stone walls and morning fog. You wince at the sound even as you wipe flour from your hands, a lump of half-formed dough still sitting on the wooden board. It's Sunday, your first married Sabbath, and the entire village knows where you're supposed to be. Your husband pulls on his good tunic, the one with the patched elbow. He doesn't speak. Neither do you. The silence isn't cold anymore, just familiar. Like a coat you keep wearing because it mostly fits. You step out together, but not touching. You walk a few paces apart, as expected. Wives trail their husbands like obedient shadows. Too close, and it's immodest. Too far, and you're already suspected of disobedience. In this village, optics matter more than truth. The chapel is crowded. The priest is already at the altar, muttering something about modesty and obedience. His robes are wine-stained and smoke-scented. You slide into a wooden bench beside your mother-in-law. She smells like garlic and dried herbs. Joke number 1. If guilt had a scent, it would be rosemary and mildew under a priest's arm. The sermon today is fire and brimstone, or at least soggy coal and mild disappointment. He speaks of Eve and her punishments, of wives who stray, of women who speak too loudly. You fold your hands, lower your eyes. Pretend not to notice that nearly every line is aimed your way. Mainstream historical fact. Medieval sermons often focused on the obedience of women, using biblical stories as moral instruction to reinforce patriarchal order. Beside you, a woman sneezes and quickly mutters an apology. 2 pews ahead, a child whispers questions to her mother and is sharply shushed. The men barely flinch, bored, or resigned. This is not new. It's not even spiritual. It's maintenance. Like weeding a garden, every Sunday, the village comes to be trimmed back into shape. After the service, you do not leave. You're summoned to the side door. The priest has a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. He waves you and your husband into a cramped side room and closes the door. "Have you prayed together yet?" he asks. You both blink. He takes your silence as guilt. He rattles off some lines about marital union, spiritual harmony, and divine oversight. Then, lowering his voice, he asks about evidence. Was the marriage consummated? Is the community reassured? You feel your stomach tighten. Your husband clears his throat and mumbles something vague. The priest nods. "We assume all is well," he says, with a tone that means, "But we'll be watching." He dismisses you with a blessing. It doesn't feel holy. Outside, the village is gathering for the Sunday meal. Long tables are set in the square. Bread, cheese, stew, communal and humble. You help serve. You're handed a ladle. People still look at you like you're a freshly planted seed they're not sure will sprout. Children laugh. The older women gossip under shawls. A man picks food out of his teeth with a twig. Life goes on. You sit beside your husband again. He says, "I hate stew on Sundays." You nod. It's always burned on the bottom. That's it, the whole exchange. But it's real and mutual, and a small comfort in a sea of performance. Later, after the meal, the women retreat to the river to wash dishes and soak cloths. This is where the true sermons happen, between the suds and sarcasm. A woman with strong arms and a missing tooth asks how your night went. Not your wedding night, the night after that. You shrug. Quiet. She nods approvingly. Quiet's better than bruised. Historians still argue whether peasant wives had any autonomy in marriage. The records are thin, but the gossip is thick. And gossip, in a village like this, is history. Quirky tidbit. Some medieval women placed charms in the hearth, woven straw, dried flowers, to protect themselves from husband's wrath. Not quite spells, just insurance. As you scrub a wooden bowl, one woman leans in. "He's not cruel," she says, meaning your husband. "No," you answer, "just quiet." She smiles. "Then train him now, before he learns to bark." You smile back, unsure if she's joking. Probably not. Joke number 2. In this village, marital advice is passed down like stew recipes, imprecise, burnt around the edges, and full of root vegetables. That evening, your mother-in-law catches you staring at the fire. "Don't waste wood," she mutters. "I wasn't," you reply. She eyes you for a moment longer, then hands you a bundle of laundry to fold. This is praise. You take it. Before bed, your husband hands you a clay figure. It's rough, poorly carved, a little animal of some sort. "I made it," he says, looking embarrassed. Not sure why. You take it. It's lopsided and cracked, but it's yours. Later, you set it on the windowsill. Not because it's beautiful, because it's a gesture, a brick in the foundation of something not yet named. That night, you lie in bed and think about the sermon, about Eve, about obedience, about the women who sang while washing, their voices soft but solid. You think about the figure, the apple, the clay animal, the fire, and you begin to realize not every act of survival has to be loud. Some are whispered, stirred into stew, folded into linens, tucked into the corner of a cold bed. Joke number 3. If holiness were measured by how many times you didn't snap today, you'd be halfway to sainthood. You fall asleep to the sound of the hearth crackling and the faint whistle of wind through the shutter gaps. And for the first time in days, your dreams don't start with dread. They start with firelight and end with silence that doesn't feel empty. Your fingers are red from scrubbing root vegetables, and your spine hums with a dull ache from crouching too long by the hearth. You've begun to categorize your days by where the pain settles: shoulders on laundry day, knees after sweeping, wrists when pounding grain. It's oddly satisfying in a grim way. Pain means you've done something. Pain means you're useful. This evening, the village is abuzz again. Someone is getting married. Another girl, 2 years younger than you, marrying the boy with the stammer and 3 goats. You weren't invited to the feast, but you can hear it from your doorstep. Drums, laughter, that same off-key hymn they sang for you. You try not to flinch when it drifts through the window. Joke number 1. Every village has exactly one wedding song, and it never gets better with repetition. You knead dough beside the fire, while your mother-in-law snores softly in the corner, wrapped in her patchwork shawl. Your husband is out checking traps, or so he says. He always says that now. He returns with nothing but mud on his boots and stories about tracks that disappeared. You don't ask questions. You just make bread. The cottage smells like yeast and smoke, and for a moment, it's almost comforting. The dough stretches between your fingers like a memory, soft, reluctant, but responsive. You hum under your breath, a lullaby from childhood, a tune about rivers and willow trees, a song that doesn't belong to this house, but you bring it anyway. And that's when the knock comes. Not a polite one, a ceremonial one, rhythmic, sharp, and ominous in its confidence. You open the door to find 3 people standing there. The village elder, a thin-faced woman with eyebrows like scythes, the priest holding a book too big for his arms, and your husband, who looks like he swallowed a handful of gravel. The elder smiles. It's not comforting. We need to verify, she says. You blink. Verify what? The union, she replies, stepping into your house uninvited. It's been a week. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers actually checked for consummation after marriage, or if it was just a formality. Either way, it was intrusive and always one-sided. The priest opens his book. Scripture says, you tune him out. You've learned that Scripture often says exactly what men want it to say. The elder glances at the hearth, the bedding, the laundry line. She's looking for signs, blood stains, mood changes, pregnancy. She sniffs like a hound. Your husband steps between you. She's been working. Look at the bread. It's true. The loaf on the table is golden, risen perfectly, the crust cracking with pride. The elder eyes it. She wants to dismiss it. But the bread complicates things. Quirky fact. In some medieval towns, a well-baked loaf could serve as unofficial proof of a wife's domestic worth. No baby yet? At least she can bake. Still, the priest mutters, flipping pages, a sign would be helpful. You step forward, calmly. Would you like to check the bed? The elder squints at you. Are you mocking us? You smile. Not sweetly, just offering evidence. There's a silence that spreads like spilled wine. Finally, the elder grunts, waves her hand, and turns on her heel. The priest follows. Your husband exhales so hard it rattles the shutters. You close the door. Joke number 2. The only thing more suspicious than a quiet wife is a competent one. That night, you bake an extra loaf. For no reason. Just because. Your husband watches. You could have said no, he mutters. You shake your head. They'd have taken that as guilt. He doesn't argue. Later, you sit together by the fire. The clay animal still sits on the windowsill, now surrounded by a small collection of objects you've quietly claimed. A pine cone, a bit of blue thread, a shard of green glass smoothed by time, a private altar to survival. He clears his throat. They asked if I'd take on the southern plot next spring. You nod. It's rocky, but it's ours. You both fall quiet again. The fire snaps. Outside, the village continues to celebrate someone else's union. But inside, your house is steady. Tense, yes, but solid. You rise, cover the bread, and stretch your arms. You feel taller lately, not in height, but in presence. Joke number 3. In medieval times, there were 2 ways to gain respect. Become a mother or become a mystery. You're working on the second one. Before bed, you kneel by the fire and whisper a prayer, not to saints or scripture, but to your own bones. You thank your hands for learning, your spine for bending without breaking, your voice for holding steady under scrutiny. You lie down beside your husband. Neither of you speaks. But as the fire dims, He shifts slightly, closer, not touching, just acknowledging. And you let sleep take you, feeling like a blade that has finally found its sheath. The frost arrives quietly, like an uninvited guest slipping through the cracks of the shutters while you sleep. You don't hear it settle, but you feel it in your bones, in your breath, in the way your toes instinctively curl away from the edge of the blanket, seeking warmth that never quite arrives. You wake in dim light before the cock crows, and for a moment, you aren't sure if you've truly slept or merely hovered somewhere between exhaustion and cold. The cottage is still. No fire, no clatter, no voices. Just the brittle silence of early winter pressing against every wall. You sit up and immediately regret it. Your breath clouds in the air like a ghost escaping your mouth. You wrap your shawl tighter around your shoulders, fumble for your shoes, and brace yourself for the floor. Hard and unforgiving as ever, but now edged with frost. Joke number 1. In the hierarchy of medieval horrors, cold feet rank just below famine and slightly above angry geese. You shuffle to the hearth and stare at the ashes, dead. The last spark has long since surrendered. You kneel, your knees groaning in quiet protest, and begin the ritual. Flint, straw, breath. You coax a new flame into life with practiced hands. You've gotten better at this. Faster, cleaner. You don't burn your knuckles anymore. Not as often. The fire sputters, then flares. A tiny triumph in a world that offers few. Your mother-in-law emerges from the back room, wrapped in 4 layers and a scowl. She nods at the fire. That's the full extent of the conversation. In her language, a nod means acceptable. You take it. By sunrise, you're chopping roots for stew. Your fingers ache from the cold, but you don't stop. You've learned to move through discomfort, to dance with it even. Outside, the village crunches under a layer of frost. The men are already trudging toward the fields, kicking at frozen clumps of dirt. It's mostly for show. Nothing grows now, but the work must continue, or at least appear to. Mainstream historical fact. In many medieval villages, labor didn't truly cease in winter. It simply shifted. Woodcutting, tool repair, animal care. Idleness was considered dangerous, morally and practically. You tie your scarf, step outside, and breathe in air so cold it slices down your throat like glass. You cross the yard to the shed where kindling is kept. The lock sticks. Your breath fogs the wood. Inside, you gather twigs and dry bark, muttering a quiet prayer to the gods of dry timber. That's when you hear the whisper. Thin, sharp, unmistakably human. You turn and see her, the herb wife. She's bent low near the forest edge, digging with a carved stick, her fingers bare and gnarled. She's older than winter, her spine a question mark, her shawl woven from mystery and gossip. She looks up. Come here, girl. You obey. No one refuses her. She smells of earth and vinegar. She presses a bundle into your hand. Dried leaves, pale roots, something brittle and fragrant. Hang this above your bed. Keeps the lungs clear. You nod. You don't ask questions. You know better now. Quirky tidbit. Some medieval households hung bunches of thyme and juniper over the bed in winter, believing it warded off coughs, evil dreams, and occasionally in-laws. You thank her, tuck the bundle into your apron, and hurry home. Back inside, your mother-in-law eyes the bundle suspiciously, but says nothing. She sees the fires still going. That earns you a moment of silence, your second victory of the morning. Your husband returns, near midday, cheeks red, nose running, arms empty. "Nothing," he mutters. Snares were iced over. You hand him a bowl of broth. He takes it without looking up. The silence between you is not hostile. It's cooperative. You've learned to share space without crowding it. A kind of survival, this quiet. The snow begins at dusk. It doesn't fall. It descends, slow and steady, as if poured from the sky by invisible hands. It coats the thatch, the road, the sleeping animals. By nightfall, it's ankle deep and rising. You bar the door, stuff rags in the window cracks, stoke the fire high. Then you wait. You're used to waiting now, waiting for spring, for change, for something unnamed to arrive or shift or end. You don't even know what you're waiting for, but you wait anyway. It's a habit, like breathing. The wind howls, the fire cracks. Your mother-in-law snores, her head tilted like a crow's. You and your husband sit close to the hearth, knees almost touching. The clay bird he carved is on the windowsill now, dusted with flour and soot. He clears his throat. "They asked if we'd take the western plot in spring." You nod slowly. "That land floods early." "Still," he says, "better than none." You glance at him. His face is chapped, his hands cracked, but his eyes are steady, tired but awake. "We'll need a fence," you say. "I know a man with spare posts." That's it. That's the conversation. But it feels like strategy, like plans, like a life being arranged, plank by frozen plank. Joke number 2. Medieval courtship. Stage 2. Sharing land management tips over barley stew. The storm howls louder. The house groans. You throw another log on the fire, then gently hang the herb wife's bundle above the hearth. Your husband watches but doesn't question it. "Smells odd," he mutters. "So do your boots," you reply. He laughs, a real one, quiet and warm, the first in days. You smile, just a little. Later he brings out a new carving. It's a fish this time, squat and lumpy. "Too many scales," he mutters. "Looks like a turnip." You take it anyway. Place it next to the bird. Outside, the snow keeps falling. The wind whispers. The world is ice and silence. But your fire is strong. Your hands are steady. And for the first time, the cold doesn't reach all the way in. Joke number 3. In a medieval marriage, love might come, or it might not. But if he makes you a wooden fish and doesn't complain when you hang herbs above the fire, that's something. You lie down beside him that night, not afraid. Not in love, exactly, but anchored, present. You stare at the ceiling and whisper a name. Not yours, not his. Just the name of a girl you used to be. And you tell her quietly. You made it through the first frost. Outside, the world is white and cruel. Inside, your world glows orange and quiet. You sleep. By the second month of winter, time becomes something you feel in your spine, not your thoughts. Days bleed into one another. The sun rises briefly, then sulks back behind the clouds like a scolded child. Your routine, once laced with dread, is now muscle memory. Wake, fire, broth, chores, silence. You've stopped counting the days since your wedding. They no longer feel worth naming. Instead, you count other things. Loaves baked, socks darned, buckets filled, nights survived. Joke number 1. Who needs a calendar when you've got chilblains to mark the passage of time? Your fingers are cracked and sore from washing linen in cold water. The river has frozen in parts, leaving just a narrow ribbon of moving current. You learn to dip your hands quickly, to breathe through the sting, to wring the fabric before your knuckles seize. Across from you, other women scrub in silence. No one talks much now. It's too cold for gossip. But there's one voice that breaks the frost. An old woman, wrapped in 3 cloaks and a sense of purpose, hums an ancient tune as she works. It's not a happy song, but it carries. A ballad, maybe, or a lament. You ask her, between rinses, what it means. It's about a girl who married wrong, she says, scrubbing harder. But outlived him anyway. She winks, then dips her cloth again. You laugh, but not too loud. Even that takes energy now. Back at home, the hearth becomes your universe. It is the center of every day. Heat, light, life. The firewood is stacked with precision now. Every stick matters. Your husband sharpens tools beside you, humming to himself. His hands are red, his lips chapped, but he's gentle with the knife. He tells you about a boy who slipped on ice and broke his wrist last winter. Didn't set right, he says. Now he can't grip a spoon. You don't reply, but you start walking slower across ice after that. Mainstream historical fact. In medieval winter, a minor injury could quickly become fatal. Infection, exposure, or simply being unable to contribute to survival could exile you from your own household. At night, your breath clouds the air above your blanket. Your mother-in-law coughs in her sleep, deep and wet. You brew her a tea of boiled herbs and honey scrapings. She drinks it without comment. It's not affection, but it's acceptance. She lets you brush her hair now. That's something. The village holds a market once a fortnight, even in winter. You go with your husband. The snow crunches underfoot like old bones. Stalls are few, and stock is scarce. Turnips, wool, dried beans, sour apples. But there's a kind of camaraderie in the cold. People nod more, speak less. You trade 2 loaves for a small pot of goose fat. Your husband calls it a fair deal. You're not sure, but you smile anyway. You also buy a scrap of red cloth, just a few inches. Pointless, really. But it reminds you of something soft, something bright, something not cold. Quirky tidbit. Some medieval women tucked scraps of colored cloth in their sleeves as a charm, or to remind themselves of spring. Back home, you sew the red cloth into the hem of your apron, a secret color. No one else needs to know. That evening, the priest visits, unannounced, of course. He enters like smoke, soft, choking, everywhere at once. Your husband stands, respectful. You pour weak ale. The priest eyes the hearth, the furnishings, your hands. How fares the household? He asks. Your husband mutters something about stew and traps. The priest turns to you. And the marriage? You meet his eyes. We are not starving. He narrows his gaze. God expects more than endurance. You say nothing. Let silence be your shield. Joke number 2. When in doubt, confuse your enemy with complete honesty. Before he leaves, the priest offers a blessing. He places his hand on your shoulder and mutters something about obedience. His palm is clammy. You wipe it off on your apron as soon as the door shuts. Later, your husband carves again. Another bird. This one is mid-flight, wings outstretched, uneven. But there's grace in its shape. He hands it to you. Drop the first one, he says. You place it beside the fish, your strange little family of wood and silence. That night, you dream of green again. Trees, mud, a stream that hasn't frozen. You dream of your mother, humming in the spring kitchen, of your younger sister, chasing chickens with her apron flapping, of the red cloth flaring like fire in the wind. And then, you wake to another white morning. But it doesn't crush you like it used to. You've grown roots here, not deep, not wide, but firm enough. Joke number 3. You came here expecting a marriage. What you got was a field to plow, a hearth to tend, and an inner monologue that could probably frighten the local clergy. You rise, you build the fire, you stretch your fingers and thank them for not breaking. Then you begin the day again. One breath, one loaf, one small flame at a time. The sun peeks out like a guilty thief, barely rising before retreating into clouds again. Midwinter in the village is not marked by celebration or feasts, but by endurance. Your world has shrunk to the size of your home and the path to the well. Everything else feels like a faraway country. And now, you are sick. It comes slowly at first. A dry throat, a bit of dizziness. You ignore it, like any peasant would. There's too much to do. Water to carry, dough to knead, ashes to sweep. But then the heat comes, not warmth. Heat. The kind that starts in your chest and spreads out, making your fingers sweat even as your toes freeze. Joke number 1. In the Middle Ages, a fever was either a test from God or just Tuesday. Your husband notices before you admit it. He watches you place a pot on the fire, then moments later, place the same pot back again, empty. That stew done already? He asks, brow furrowing. You blink at him. What stew? He doesn't ask more. He just takes your arm and gently leads you to the sleeping bench. His hand is warm, calloused, but careful. Mainstream historical fact. Illness during winter often meant isolation, as many feared contagion without understanding it. Yet within households, care remained one of the few constants of medieval life. Your mother-in-law scowls, mutters something about lazy bones and weak stock. But she sets extra broth on the hearth and adds garlic. She doesn't look at you when she ladles it out. You lie in bed for hours, or days. Time curls in on itself, indistinct. The fire flickers in and out of focus. Your dreams are strange, mud and blood and bells that ring underwater, faces that appear and vanish, a child's voice calling a name you haven't heard in years. Once, you wake to find your husband asleep on the floor beside you, his fingers still holding a wooden carving, half finished in his lap. You can't tell what it's supposed to be. You fall asleep again. The fever breaks on the 4th night. You wake drenched in sweat, throat raw, body trembling. But something has shifted. The world is clearer. You can feel the weight of your limbs again, the texture of the blanket, the rough grain of the wooden bench beneath your spine. You're not healed, but you are returning. Quirky tidbit. One folk remedy for fever was tying dried onions to the soles of your feet. Another was stuffing crushed leeks under your pillow. Neither of these appears in your dreams, which probably means they were never used. Or, thankfully, discarded by your caretakers. When you're strong enough to sit up, your mother-in-law places a bowl of boiled barley and bone shavings in your lap. It smells awful. You eat every bite. Can't have you dying, she mutters. Too much work to find another one. You almost laugh. Almost. The next day, your husband clears the snow off the thatch. You sit by the fire, still too weak to join, but upright. You watch him move. Slow, precise, focused. You know now what he does not say. That he stayed by your side. That he washed your forehead with cold cloths. That he stoked the fire while your breath stuttered in the dark. He returns inside, red-cheeked, stomping snow from his boots. You didn't burn, he says, offering a smile. You didn't run, You reply. That is all. That is enough. Later, you take slow steps around the room, touching familiar things. The wall where you carved a star with a nail. The window ledge where the bird sits. The cup with the chipped handle. The red cloth in your apron hem, now faded but still there. Your house isn't warm, exactly, but it isn't cold either. Something new has settled in the air. Something earned. Joke number 2. In medieval marriages, shared illness was either a curse or a shortcut to intimacy, with lower expectations and more garlic. The next morning you go outside for the first time in a week. The snow crunches beneath your boots. The village is gray and silent. Chimneys smoke steadily. Life hasn't paused for your fever, but it hasn't left you behind either. You make your way slowly to the well, where 2 other women are drawing water. One of them nods at you. The other says, "Thought you were done for." You nod back. "Not yet." They don't laugh, but they don't scowl either. That's as warm a welcome as you're likely to get. Historians still argue whether village women had supportive networks or were more often in quiet competition. Likely, the answer is both, depending on the season, the sickness, and the stew. You return home with a full bucket, arms trembling, lungs burning. Your husband doesn't offer to carry it, but he does open the door. You both understand what that means. That night, you stir a weak stew while he carves another object in silence. You sit beside him. He doesn't look up. "Still ugly?" he asks, holding it out. You take it. It's not a bird this time. It's a little person, bent and lumpy, but smiling. "No," you say, turning it in your hand. "Looks like it survived something." He nods. "So have you." The fire snaps. You say nothing more, but as you settle into bed, your hand still holding the carved figure, you feel something odd settle over you. Not gratitude, exactly. Not comfort, but a recognition. You are not a visitor in this life anymore. You are becoming part of it. Joke number 3. You know you've recovered when your stew starts tasting terrible on purpose again. Outside, the frost thickens. Inside, your breath is steady. You close your eyes and sleep for once without dreams. You rise before dawn, not because you must, but because you can. After days wrapped in a fog of fever, your body finally obeys you again. You sit up and feel the ache, not pain, but the reminder that you're stitched together by effort, not ease. You roll your shoulders and stretch your arms. They respond like old friends, stiff but loyal. The fire is low. You feed it 3 small sticks and whisper encouragement like it's a shy animal. It catches. You nod, as if you and the flame have struck a bargain. Outside, the snow has begun to melt. Not much, just enough to turn the roads to slush and the roofs to dripping teeth. Winter hasn't left, but it's thinking about it. You recognize that feeling. The moment you stop surviving and start wondering what comes next. Joke number 1. In a medieval village, the only thing less predictable than the weather was your own resilience. Your husband is still asleep. Your mother-in-law, too. For the first time, the silence belongs to you. You savor it. You stir the porridge gently, letting the oats thicken while your mind wanders. You think of your family, your younger sister, your mother's wrinkled hands, your father's laugh that only showed up once a month. You wonder if they've written to you. You wonder if anyone still remembers which month you left. You add salt to the pot. Not too much. You've learned that balance. Later, your husband rises and joins you at the table. He eats slowly, then gestures at the carved figurine from last night. You named it? You blink. It's not a pig. He shrugs. Still deserves a name? You smile. Maybe. The two of you share a moment that's not quite laughter, not quite silence, something in between. The next days fall into rhythm again. The melt brings mud, and mud brings mess. You scrub floors until your knuckles sting. You patch a tunic. You barter a stale loaf for a sprig of dried rosemary from the herb wife, who still smells like root cellar secrets. Quirky tidbit. Medieval villagers believed rosemary placed above the door could protect a home from misfortune and uninvited spirits, which, honestly, included both disease and the priest. Speaking of which, he returns, this time with parchment. We're preparing records, he says, unrolling the scroll. Household names, property, family lineage. You understand? You nod. He scratches your names into the list. Then he hesitates. And any children? You meet his eyes. Calm, still. None. He clicks his tongue. God's timing is not ours to question. You say nothing. Let him fill the silence with righteousness. When he leaves, your husband exhales, like he's been holding his breath the whole time. You don't speak of it again. That evening, you try something new. You ask him a question. Did you ever want this? He pauses, mid-carve. What? This life, the farm, the marriage. He doesn't answer right away, just keeps carving. Then, I wanted not to be hungry, not to be beaten, not to sleep in a barn. You nod. That's not the same as wanting you, but it's something. It's honest. You tilt your head. And now? He shrugs. You bake better than my mother. You laugh, genuinely, loud enough to startle the cat on the windowsill. You didn't even know you had a cat. Maybe it adopted you. Mainstream historical fact. It wasn't uncommon for animals to wander into homes during cold seasons and stay, becoming semi-domesticated, much like spouses. You start naming things quietly in your mind. The wooden fish becomes Pock. The bird, Bramble. The red thread in your apron, Thorn. The cat, Crumb. You don't tell anyone, not yet, but it makes you feel less like a guest in your own body. The village hosts a feast for Candlemas, a rare day where fire isn't just survival, it's symbolism. You don't attend the service, but you do light 2 candles at home. One for what is past, one for what still waits. Your husband watches. What are those for? You shrug. Light, warmth. Hope he doesn't scoff, doesn't laugh, just nods. Later that night, he places something beside the candle. It's another carving, a small bowl, the size of your palm. He's not good at carving bowls. It wobbles, but he hands it to you like it matters. For salt, he says simply. You place it on the table. You fill it with just a pinch. Joke number 2. In medieval marriages, you might never hear, I love you. But you might get a custom salt bowl, close enough. You lie down beside him that night and find that you're not bracing anymore, not holding your breath. You're simply there. The fire flickers. The cat shifts at your feet. The wind taps at the shutter like an old friend checking in. And you whisper, just to yourself, just once. This is my house now. It's not a prayer, not a declaration, just a truth. There's a strange kind of stillness in early spring. Not warmth, not color, just the absence of winter's tight grip. The snow recedes into reluctant puddles. The mud deepens. The birds begin testing their voices again, like children unsure whether they're allowed to speak. You wake with a strange sensation. Your feet aren't cold. That alone feels like a holiday. Joke number 1. Medieval weather was like medieval in-laws, unpredictable, overstaying, and occasionally kind when you least expected it. The sun breaks through the clouds in fragments. You stand outside and lift your face toward it. It doesn't warm you, not really, but it touches you. That's new. That's enough. Inside, everything smells of damp wood and old smoke. You open the shutters. Light spills in, dusty and gold. Your mother-in-law grunts from her stool. Won't last. You nod. Neither do turnips. We still eat them. She snorts. You're not sure if that was approval or just a cough, but either way, she doesn't close the shutters. Mainstream historical fact. In medieval villages, even the first signs of spring didn't mean food security. In fact, February and March were often the hungriest months. Stored supplies dwindled, and fresh crops hadn't yet come in. You sweep the floor again. You've started rearranging things subtly. A bowl moved from shelf to table. A ladle hung slightly higher. The hearthstone scrubbed until your fingers ache. Not for cleanliness, for control, for proof that you are shaping this place, not just surviving it. That afternoon, your husband returns from the woods with a bundle of sticks and a strange look in his eyes. The priest wants to talk to us, he says. You pause. Us? He says it's time. The words hang like smoke. Time for what, you don't ask. You already know. You've been married for months now. No child, no sign, no explanation. Only whispers, only expectations. That evening, the priest visits. Again. He asks you to kneel. He speaks of sin, of duties, of the blessing of the womb. You listen. You do not kneel. When he's done, you offer him a weak ale. He accepts it with a frown. He does not finish it. Quirky tidbit. Certain medieval communities believed that drinking water from a saint's well could cure infertility, provided you also avoided garlic and immoderate thoughts. So, not very promising. That night, you and your husband lie side by side, not touching, not speaking. The candle gutters. The air smells of soot and silence. You break it first. Do you think something's wrong with me? He exhales slowly. If there is, it's not your fault. You turn your face toward the wall. Would you take another wife? You ask, voice barely a whisper. He pauses. Too long. Number. Another pause. But they might make me. You close your eyes. Joke number 2. In medieval love stories, people either die of passion or live long enough to get replaced by their cousin. The days blur again, but differently now. Not from illness, not from fear, but from watching. Your body, your cycle, your every small sign. You try not to hope. You try not to dread. You fail at both. The herb wife visits. She brings a bitter root and a warning. This won't make a child, but it might clear the path. You nod. You boil it in silence. You drink it while your mother-in-law pretends not to notice. It tastes like mud and metal. You drink it anyway. And then, nothing. The cycle comes again, red and certain. You bury the cloth in the snow, quietly, alone. Historians still argue whether medieval women had agency over their own fertility. Some suggest local customs allowed for private rituals and secret herbs. Others point to the ever-watchful eye of the church. Likely, both were true. Like everything else. Messy, tangled, surviving in contradiction. You return home to find your husband mending a fence. He looks up, sees your face, and doesn't ask anything. Instead, he holds out a wooden shape, a new carving. Not a bird, not a bowl, a spoon. Small, crooked, useless. You take it. It's terrible, you say. He grins. It's a start. Later, you hang it beside the door. A charm, a joke, a defiance. Something to make space for what may never arrive. That night, you sit by the fire and whisper to the small figurine on the sill. You tell her it's not her fault. You tell her she's still enough. And you mean it. The wind has changed outside. Inside, your shoulders finally relax, not in surrender, in permission. Joke number 3. In medieval marriage, sometimes the strongest vow is not, I do. It's I stay. The thaw doesn't come all at once. It creeps in sideways, dripping from the eaves, softening the edges of frozen roads. What was once white turns to gray, then brown. Then something green dares to poke up in a corner of the garden you thought was dead. Life, in this season, arrives awkwardly. Muddy boots first. You kneel outside the cottage, scraping at frozen earth with a dull spade. Your husband has begun marking plots with stones again, muttering about peas, onions, and turnips in a way that almost sounds optimistic. You don't interrupt. This is his ritual, as much as your baking is yours. Joke number 1. Nothing says romance like spring tilling with frostbitten hands and a shovel that hates you. Inside, the hearth still burns in the mornings, but you've begun leaving the shutters open wider, letting in the light even when it carries a bite. The house smells of wet wood and sour cloth, but also of something else, possibility. Your mother-in-law complains about the draft, but doesn't shut the windows. Small victories. One morning, a letter arrives. Well, not a letter exactly. A scrap of parchment carried by a trader, scrawled with ink that runs in the rain. It's from your sister. She writes of lambing season, of a neighbor who fell in a well, of a wedding at the next village over. She asks if you're well and growing. You know what she means. You don't answer that part. Instead, you write back that the cat is fat, the snow has receded, and your bread has stopped burning. You add a drawing of the wooden bird just for her. She'll smile at that. Mainstream historical fact. Medieval correspondence among peasants was rare, but not unheard of. When families were literate or had access to someone who could write, letters were passed along by traders, clergy, or even wandering minstrels. They often took weeks or months to arrive. That same day, your husband calls you to the field's edge. He points at a patch of dirt. What do you see? He asks. You squint. A hole. A rabbit hole. He corrects. Means we'll need fencing here. You nod. And a snare. He grins. Already set one. You walk back to the cottage together, muddy boots in step. That evening, the priest visits again. You can smell his arrival before he knocks. Sweat and candle wax, mixed with sanctimony. He sits by the fire like he owns it. You offer him barley beer, and he declines, as usual. He talks about duty. Again. About blessings. Again. About the season of fruitfulness. You nod and say nothing. He looks at you hard. You must not delay what God has intended. You glance at your husband. He does not flinch, does not rise. We're not delaying, he says quietly. We're just living. The priest frowns, mutters something about confessions, and eventually leaves. The door shuts behind him with a satisfying thud. Quirky tidbit. In some villages, couples who had not produced children within the first year were subjected to public prayers, or worse, community scrutiny during feasts where fertility was encouraged, with odd foods and even odder advice. Your village hasn't reached that level yet, but you're wary. That night, you make flatbread with wild onion from the woods. Your husband chews it slowly and says, "Better than my aunt's." You pause. The one who's missing a toe? He nods, still had opinions. You both laugh, genuinely, loud enough that even your mother-in-law cracks a smile, briefly, then hides it in her broth. You sleep that night with your hand resting on your own belly, not in longing, not in despair, just acknowledgement, like setting down a heavy bag and walking without it for once. Joke number 2. In medieval parenting, half the challenge was conceiving. The other half was not getting unsolicited advice from people who believed turnips caused twins. The days grow longer. The chickens begin laying again. The cat catches something large and drags it proudly indoors. You scream. Your husband laughs. You don't throw the cat out. Life, it seems, is returning. Not dramatically. Not with fanfare, but with steady insistence. You start carving too. Badly. But you do it. You make a tiny duck. It looks more like a pebble with legs, but you don't care. You place it next to his bird, the fish, the crooked spoon. He notices. Doesn't say anything. Just hands you a sharper knife. That's his way. Historians still argue whether peasant marriages grew from survival into affection, or if the affection was simply a tool for better survival. You suspect it doesn't matter. Either way, it holds. One morning, you find a sprig of yellow flowers placed beside the hearth. No note, no explanation, just a gesture. You leave them there until they dry, then tie them with thread and hang them above the door. Like rosemary, like the spoon, you've created your own little shrine of unlikely blessings. Joke number 3. Medieval love languages include carving lumpy animals, enduring silence together, and occasionally leaving flowers without explanation. Hallmark doesn't make cards for that. You sleep easier now. Not because everything is resolved, but because you've stopped waiting for it to be. You've made peace with the maybe. You've grown roots, not just into the soil, but into yourself. The mud dries. The first true green appears, not the sullen moss that hangs on all year, but defiant, fragile shoots peeking up like children playing a risky game of tag with the last frost. You stand in the garden with dirt under your fingernails and sun on your back, and for a strange, flickering moment, you smile without realizing it. You don't feel light, but you feel awake. You've started rising before everyone else, even the cat. Not from dread, not out of obligation, but because the silence at dawn feels earned. You light the fire, stir the ashes, grind a bit of last year's dried mint into the morning tea. These are your rhythms now. Not taught, not commanded, but grown. Joke number 1. The only thing more sacred than sunrise in a medieval home? 10 uninterrupted minutes before your mother-in-law starts listing everything you're doing wrong. You visit the stream for the first time in months. It gurgles along like it never froze, like it wasn't buried in ice and fear. You sit on the edge and listen, not because you're praying, just because it's there, moving, alive. You wash your hands in the cold water. You don't shiver. Your husband joins you later with a sack of old tools. He's quiet, like he doesn't want to disturb the mood, only sharpen the blades. He offers you a whetstone. You've never sharpened anything before. He shows you how to angle the blade, how to draw it slowly. You try, poorly, but you try. He doesn't correct you. He just sharpens the next one beside you, letting the rhythm speak louder than his voice. Mainstream historical fact. In medieval households, women frequently managed tools and small repairs when necessary, especially during illness, war, or simply when the men weren't available. Competency was a matter of necessity, not pride. You sharpen 2 knives before the sky darkens. He gathers the tools. You carry the whetstone. It feels like a shared secret. Back at the house, the priest is waiting. Again, he sits on the bench like it's his. He asks the usual questions, eyes scanning the room like he's expecting a miracle to manifest in a bread bowl. Your mother-in-law fawns a little. You don't blame her. He brings tithes, news, judgment, but this time, he speaks directly to you. The village has noted your efforts, but your union still lacks fulfillment. You reply, steady. We have food. We have warmth. We have peace. He frowns. You know that's not what I mean. You nod. I know, but it's what I mean. He warns of sin, of barrenness, of consequence. You thank him for his visit. Then, to your own surprise, you ask him to leave. He does, eventually. Quirky tidbit. Some medieval women carried small charms or stitched prayers into their clothing to ward off the stigma of infertility. Others brewed quiet teas of mugwort or pennyroyal, not always to cure, but sometimes simply to cope. You take a long walk that evening. You pass the field where your husband set the traps. One is sprung. Inside, a rabbit. You hesitate. You open it. Let the creature go. It limps away, but it goes. You return home and say nothing. Your husband notices the empty trap, says nothing. But that night, he leaves a carving on your side of the bed. It's not a bird, not a fish, not a child. It's you. The curve of your braid, the slope of your back, the lines of your dress. Rough, imprecise, but recognizable. You hold it. You don't speak. Joke number 2. In medieval romance, nothing says, I see you, like a lump of wood with your nose slightly too big. And yet, somehow, it works. Later, as you lie beside each other, you finally ask, what if this is it? Just us? He answers without looking at you. Then let it be us. Simple, solid, no poetry, but it lands in your ribs like a vow. The next day, the midwife's daughter visits. She's young, loud, full of spring and smoke. She brings herbs and gossip, tells you who's expecting, who's left, who's arrived. Still just the 2 of you? She asks. You nod. She shrugs. Could be worse. At least you're not the goat keeper's 3rd wife. That man smells like turnip dreams. You laugh harder than you should. She grins victorious. She leaves you with a sprig of lavender. For your pillow, she winks. Or to keep the priest away, you tuck it in your apron. Historians still argue whether humor was a shield or a sword for medieval women. Truth is, it was probably both. That evening, you sit on the steps, watching the horizon blur gold and gray. Your husband sits beside you. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. The silence between you is no longer heavy. It's shared. The cat rubs against your leg. The carving rests in your palm. You close your eyes, breathe in the lavender, and for the first time in this place, this life, you feel something soft settle on your chest. Not fear, not regret, not even hope, just peace. Joke number 3. Who needs a baby when you've got a lavender pillow, a lump of wood in your likeness, and a man who finally stops talking when you need it most? The days stretch. The sun lingers longer, like a guest who's finally decided they enjoy your company. You hang laundry on the line, and for once, it dries before the frost returns. The wind still bites, but it's less cruel now, more like a friend with rough hands. Your hands are stronger too, calloused, steady. You used to flinch at the feel of cold water. Now you barely notice. This life has toughened you in places you didn't know could be hardened. Joke number 1. By springtime, your hands are so rough you could sand wood with your palms. And you probably have. The fields demand attention now. Your husband begins planting. You help. Kneeling side by side in the soil, planting onions like prayers. Quiet, repetitive, hopeful. Each time you press a bulb into the earth, it feels like a question. Will this take root? And each time you cover it with dirt, you don't wait for the answer. Inside the house, changes happen slowly. The wooden duck now sits beside a new addition, a lump of clay you molded into what you claim is a cow. Your husband says it looks like a sad boot. You keep it anyway. You've stopped waiting for a child to fill the space. You're filling it yourselves with carvings, with bread, with silence, with laughter, with terrible sculptures. Mainstream historical fact. Many medieval homes contained handmade objects and toys, not just for children, but for comfort and charm. People crafted things from what they had: wood, cloth, bone, clay, not to sell, but simply to remind themselves they were alive. You begin walking to the edge of the village alone. Not far, just far enough. There's a hill that overlooks the stream. You sit there most days, the clay cow in your pocket, the lavender sprig now dried and fraying. You watch the sun dip over rooftops. You watch the seasons shift not just in the trees, but in your breath. You used to come here to escape. Now you come here to return. One afternoon, you find someone else already there, a young girl from the village. She's quiet, barefoot, face blotched with freckles. She glances at you, then back at the stream. You sit beside her without a word. She doesn't leave. That's enough. The next day, she's there again. She brings a bit of bread, breaks it in half, offers you some. You accept. That night, you tell your husband. He shrugs. Maybe she's feral, he says, or just likes you. You smile. Maybe both. Quirky tidbit. Some medieval villagers believed children left alone too often might be claimed by the woods, returning wild-eyed and full of riddles. Others simply believed they were lonely. The girl doesn't speak much, but she listens. You find yourself telling her things about your old home, about the priest, about the duck carving and the clay cow. She listens like it matters. One evening, she braids a strand of grass and ties it around your wrist. You keep it on, even when it starts to fray. Later, you carve a tiny fox. Leave it on the hill for her. She doesn't thank you. But the next day, she's wearing it on a string around her neck. Joke number 2. You've accidentally adopted a woodland child. No one warns you about this stage of medieval marriage. Your mother-in-law starts complaining of hip pain. You make her a poultice. She grumbles that it smells like death, then applies it herself when she thinks you're not looking. Your husband builds a new bench for the garden. It tilts dangerously to the left. You both sit on it anyway, legs braced like sailors. It becomes a joke, your joke. The priest stops visiting, not because he's changed, but because you have. You no longer invite his judgment with your silence. One evening, you take the girl's hand and lead her to your cottage. You feed her stew. She eats like someone who's always waiting for the bowl to disappear. You tell her she can come again, whenever she wants. She doesn't nod, doesn't smile. But the next evening, she's already on the steps, waiting. Historians still argue whether informal guardianship like this was common or rare. In truth, medieval communities thrived on unofficial bonds, shared responsibilities, spontaneous adoptions, quiet understandings. The legal record may be thin, but the human record was rich. That night, your husband carves a fox, gives it to her. She smiles, for the first time, then falls asleep by the hearth, curled like a cat. You tuck a blanket around her, sit beside your husband, watch the fire burn down to coals, and for the first time in months, you say it. This is enough. He doesn't respond. He doesn't have to. Joke number 3, you started with no child. You ended up with a small, silent fox girl who eats half your bread and refuses to wear shoes. Medieval life always finds a way. Outside, the sky softens. The wind carries no frost. Inside, the silence is no longer empty. It's full of strange grace, of quiet joy, of a life that doesn't need explanation. Spring pushes into the village like a stubborn guest, tracking in mud, waking up the hens, splashing light across floors that haven't seen sun since October. The air smells different now. Not sweet, exactly, but awake. You can taste the green in the breeze. Everything feels as if it's been holding its breath for too long and is now exhaling. You scrub the windows, not because anyone told you to, but because you want to see. The girl, your fox child as you secretly call her, has returned every day. She still doesn't speak much, but she started to hum. Weird little tuneless things while she pokes at the garden or strings pebbles on twine. Sometimes you hum back. Sometimes you just let the rhythm carry between you. She builds a tiny cairn beside the back step. Every day, she adds a new rock. You don't ask what it means. Some things don't need explaining. Joke number 1. Medieval kids didn't need toys. They had sticks, rocks, and unresolved emotional symbolism. One morning you wake to find your husband already gone. He returns before midday with a sapling, an actual green-leafed growing tree. He sets it in the middle of your shared garden and begins digging a hole. You step outside, blinking against the sun. What is that? Future shade, he says, or firewood, depending. You laugh. How romantic. He plants it anyway. You both water it. Then, without saying a word, the fox child adds one of her cairn rocks to its base. The three of you stand there, slightly confused by your own quiet ritual. And it feels good. Later, you sit on the crooked bench, now wedged so it doesn't tilt as much, watching birds tug old straw into new nests. Your husband mends a basket. The girl sketches something with charcoal on the wall. A house with crooked eaves. A big round cat. A bird that looks suspiciously like your original carving. Mainstream historical fact. Rural medieval life depended heavily on seasonal tasks. But during early spring, before crops could be harvested, there was sometimes a brief window for rest, repair, or creative work. It didn't last long, but it mattered. That afternoon, the priest's voice echoes down the lane again. He's preaching in the square. You don't go. You stay in the garden and tend to your onions. He no longer visits. You wonder if someone told him about the girl, or the tree, or the look in your eyes. You find that you don't care. That evening, your husband hands you a carved flower, a rose, clumsy but clear. You take it. Are we happy? You ask, almost without meaning to. He pauses, considers. Are we allowed to be? You turn the rose in your fingers. Maybe not by their rules. He shrugs. Then let's make our own. Quirky tidbit. Some folk customs claimed that planting a tree after marriage would guarantee fertility, luck, or a peaceful home, depending on the type of tree and whether it was blessed. You don't know what kind of tree you planted, but it's yours. The fox child begins calling the cat Sir Greedy. No one corrects her. It fits. You start sewing her a cloak from leftover fabric, patches of wool and linen dyed with herbs. She hates wearing it, but keeps it folded neatly on the bench. Small victories. You show her how to knead bread. She uses too much flour. The loaf comes out hard as a roof tile. Your husband bites into it anyway, doesn't complain. Joke number 2. Marriage teaches you compromise. Parenthood teaches you how to fake liking burnt bread. At night, you notice something unusual. You're not waiting anymore. Not for the priest, not for approval, not even for a child. You're living. And it's not a compromise. It's a creation. You watch the girl sleep curled against the hearth. You watch your husband mumble in his dreams. You press your hand to your belly, not with hope, not with grief, just awareness. This body has walked through fire and frost, and now it's home. Historians still debate what a successful medieval marriage looked like. Was it children, land, dowry, obedience? But there's something powerful in the idea that success might also mean choosing to stay, to nurture, to soften, to shape a future in small, handmade ways. You place the carved rose on the mantel beside the crooked spoon and the duck and the lumpy clay cow. You add your own rock to the girl's cairn. You light a candle, not for God, not for wishes, but simply for light. And in that flickering glow, your life no longer looks like a half-filled bowl. It looks like a hearth. Joke number 3. The medieval recipe for joy: 1 tired wife, 1 quiet husband, a feral girl child, and a questionable cat. Stir gently. Do not overthink. You begin to notice things. The way the wind shifts just before rain. The rhythm of the fox child's footsteps in the garden. How your husband clears his throat exactly twice before saying anything serious. These tiny cues form a kind of music, one only you seem to hear. You're not sure when you started tuning in, but now you can't unhear it. Joke number 1. Medieval romance was 90% reading body language and 10% not getting eaten by wolves. The cairn by the step has grown tall enough to wobble. One morning, the girl silently removes the top stone, cradles it in her palm, then sets it down again with great ceremony. You watch her, trying not to smile. Later that week, the village gossip delivers news with far more ceremony than needed. A woman from 2 villages over has been granted an annulment. She's leaving, going back to her father's house. People whisper, she was barren. They also whisper, he beat her. They whisper everything but the truth, because the truth is too quiet, too plain. And yet, that small event spreads like dandelion fluff. You hear the whispers reach your own doorstep. Your husband hears them too. He doesn't mention them. But the next morning he gives you a gift. Not a carving this time. A wooden comb, smooth, polished, handmade. You run your fingers over it. It's lovely. I thought maybe you'd stop using the cat brush. You both laugh, and it breaks the weight of the gossip like a dry twig. Mainstream historical fact. While rare, annulments were possible in medieval Europe, especially under church law. Grounds ranged from non-consummation to consanguinity to coercion. Though money, influence, and clergy relationships often played a bigger role than justice. You think about the woman who left, about the price she paid to reclaim herself, about how many others simply stayed, not because they were weak, but because they had something to build. The fox child watches you one evening as you comb your hair. "You ever been a mother?" she asks suddenly. It stops you mid-stroke. "No," you say. "Not in the usual way." She nods, like that answer fits. She hands you a pebble from her pocket. It's heart-shaped. You keep it. Later, you place it on the mantel with the rest. That night, your husband asks, "Would you ever want to leave?" You turn the question over slowly. "I think I did once," you say. "But now," you look around. The girl asleep in her corner, the cat licking its foot, the fire burning low, the carvings above. Now, I think I'd miss what we made." He nods, says nothing else. Joke number 2. The medieval measure of commitment is how much weird handmade junk you're willing to leave behind. You walk the boundary of your garden the next morning, noting each new sprout. The onions have risen. The peas cling to their poles. The tree in the middle casts the first sliver of shade. The fox child adds a second tree to her charcoal wall drawing. Yours. It's a little crooked, a little lopsided, but it's there. You remember, faintly, how the priest used to tell you that your worth would be measured in children. But here, it's measured in bread, in firewood, in quiet evenings, in laughter you didn't expect to come back. Historians still argue whether non-traditional family structures, blended households, adopted children, unmarried partnerships, were common in medieval villages, or simply tolerated. Some evidence suggests they were more accepted than later eras, provided the fields were tilled and the taxes were paid. And somehow, you're part of that quiet, undocumented majority. You, your husband, your girl who isn't yours, and the cranky cat who probably owns all of you. Joke number 3. You might not have a church-blessed family tree, but you've got a hearth and a girl and a man who carves spoons like love letters. That'll do. One evening, the fox child places her last rock atop the cairn. It doesn't fall. She turns to you and says simply, "Done." "What is it?" She shrugs. "It's everything." And somehow, you understand. You sleep that night with the window cracked open, spring breeze washing over the room, lavender tucked under your pillow, the carved rose resting against your hand. And for the first time, you dream not of what you've lost or longed for, but what you've built. The sun rises earlier now, spilling gold across the worn floorboards before you've even lit the fire. You no longer dread the mornings. In fact, you welcome them. Each day feels less like survival, more like a rhythm. Imperfect, yes, but yours. Today, you bake. Not because there's a feast or a guest or some sacred calendar date, but because you feel like filling the house with warmth. The dough rises obediently under your cloth. You hum a song that has no name while the fox child sweeps dust from the corner. Your husband carves a spoon with a curved handle. When you ask what it's for, he says, "Soup you haven't made yet." That's how things are now, preparing for joys not yet imagined. The priest hasn't returned in weeks. Maybe he's given up. Maybe the village stopped listening. Maybe you stopped needing his approval. Whatever the reason, the silence he left behind has become something fertile. Mainstream historical fact. While the medieval church loomed large in daily life, local influence varied widely. In small rural communities, power dynamics often shifted with seasons, sickness, and quiet rebellion. Piety was expected, but personal faith rarely matched the institution's control. You place the warm loaf on the mantel to cool, next to the rose, the duck, the fox, the pebble. a strange little shrine of everything they said wouldn't matter. And yet, here you are. The fox child joins you in the garden. She's wearing her patchy cloak. A crown of twigs rests on her head. "I'm the lady of this land," she declares. You curtsy. "Then I'm your steward." She nods solemnly. "You're also the cook." Fair enough. Joke number 1. Medieval titles are easy to earn. All you need is a crown made of sticks and a strong opinion about soup. Later, she asks if she can plant something. You hand her a few beans. She digs carefully, presses each one into the dirt like a wish. She doesn't say what she hopes for, but you understand anyway. Your husband watches from the door, says nothing, just smiles. You sit beside him as the sun fades, the sky turning bruised orange. You lean your head on his shoulder. He rests his hand on yours. You don't talk about what you've lost or what might still come. You just are, together. Quirky tidbit. In parts of medieval Europe, peasants tied bits of colored thread or herbs to trees as quiet blessings for fertility, protection, or peace. Most weren't sanctioned by the church, but they endured. That evening, you tie a red thread around the base of your little tree. No words, no prayers, just the gesture. Later, after supper, the fox child curls up by the hearth with the cat on her belly. She whispers, "I think he likes me now." You whisper back, "He doesn't like anyone." That's how you know. She laughs, soft and real. Your husband sets a new carving on the shelf. It's the crooked tree, bent in the middle, blooming at the top. You say, "It looks like it's dancing." He replies, "It's you." You let that sit between you, like steam from a good bowl of stew. You go to bed with the window open again. The wind is warm now. The lavender has faded, but you keep it near anyway. You've stopped measuring time in seasons or church days. Now, you mark it by carvings, by shared looks, by laughter, by survival, by choice. Historians still argue whether peasants had agency in their marriages, their faith, their lives. But you know the answer. You chose to stay, to build, to soften without surrender, to make a life where one wasn't promised. Joke number 2. Turns out, defiance doesn't always look like a sword in the air. Sometimes it's a duck on a shelf, a loaf in the oven, and a girl in a patched cloak calling herself royalty. You wake just before dawn, step outside into the dew-soaked world. The breeze is gentle. The fields are quiet. The sky, not yet blue, holds the soft gray of a day not yet defined. And in that breathless hush, you feel it. Not fear, not duty, not hope. Just presence. You're still here. You're still you. And that's enough. And now, everything slows. The fire dims to its last glow. No crackles, no flare-ups, just the quiet hiss of embers exhaling warmth into the bones of the room. You sit still, feeling the hush settle over every rough timber and patch of worn stone. The cat purrs low from across the room. The fox child sleeps, her face soft, her chest rising in the slow, easy rhythm of dreamless rest. You breathe in time with her, in time with the house, in time with the earth outside your walls. That, too, is resting. A breeze stirs the curtain, just slightly, and with it, the scent of soil, of old bread, of something green and growing. You don't move to close the window. You let it in. Your eyes trace the carvings on the mantel again. The duck, the spoon, the rose, the crooked tree, little testaments to a life that refused to vanish. Each shape carved in silence, held in calloused hands, born not out of ambition, but of care. These are your relics, not gilded, not sainted, but real. Your fingers brush the string on your wrist, now faded and frayed. You don't untie it, not yet. It's still doing its work, holding something unseen together. You think of the voices that once told you who you must become, the way they weighed your value like grain, the way they measured womanhood by wombs, not words. You do not hate them, but you no longer invite them in. The girl turns in her sleep, murmurs something half-formed, and then stills. You smile, without meaning to. And in that smile sits every small rebellion you've made. The choice to stay, to plant, to shape love out of stubborn mornings and burnt bread and honest silence. Outside, the stars begin to fade, retreating from a sky that's not quite night, not yet morning. The first bird sings, a single note, tentative and perfect. You stretch your fingers toward the fire, feel the lingering heat, and imagine it carrying forward, into tomorrow, into the next planting, into whatever version of family you'll build next. The girl will grow, the tree will bloom or it won't, the priest will return or he won't. None of it changes this. You chose, and in that choice, there is peace. Now, let your breath grow slow. Let your eyes soften. Let the sounds around you melt into quiet. There is nothing left to do. You are already enough. The fire, the earth, the breath in your lungs, all of it is yours. Sleep now. You are home.